Imagine for a second that you are a master of deception. You've spent months sitting in this tiny freezing room just meticulously building the perfect lie.
Right, like a completely flawless digital fabrication.
Exactly. We're talking an algorithm designed from the ground up for a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar con.
You've stress tested it,
Yeah.
you've mapped every single variable. It's totally airtight.
Yeah, an impenetrable piece of fiction. But then, right in the middle of your perfectly fake data, you spot an anomaly.
Oh man, this is the best part.
Right, a world-altering, completely impossible truth buried directly inside your lie. And the terrifying part is, you didn't put it there.
Which is just such a chilling realization.
It really is. And that realization is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome to a brand new deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are unpacking Louis Bonaldi's gripping novella, The Ruse Brothers.
I'm so excited for this one.
Me too. Our goal today is to really unravel the central, delicious irony of this story. Like, how does a highly sophisticated confidence trick inadvertently uncover a genuine 4-billion-year-old extraterrestrial signal?
It's just a completely mind-bending narrative engine. I mean, you build an artificial container to trick someone, and somehow fundamental reality just sneaks inside it.
Yeah, it's wild.
Today, we're going to analyze the parallel lives of the protagonists, dive into a government conspiracy dating back to 1947, and break down how the actual mechanics of deception—
Like the traditional tools of the con.
Exactly, how those tools were ultimately the only way to force global transparency. The core theme we'll keep hitting is this beautiful paradox, that sometimes the ruse is the only architecture capable of protecting the truth.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the inciting incident because it sets up the entire scientific foundation.
Hmm.
We meet Dr. Alyssa Hart.
Right, the brilliant former Cambridge theoretical physicist.
Yes, but her current reality is a shrinking, damp, hackney bedsit. She is staring at her laptop, designing this massive algorithmic lie for Marco Reyes, who's the head of the Ruse Brothers crew.
And that's when she finds those impossible data points.
Yeah, 11 of them, just sitting right inside her own fraudulent code.
To understand why Alyssa's hands start shaking when she sees this, we have to understand what those 11 points actually are.
Give it the breakdown.
Well, in astrophysics, the universe doesn't produce accidents with this specific, highly ordered geometry. These points form what she calls terminal sequences.
Terminal sequences?
Yeah, it's a base 12 mathematical encoding.
Which immediately screams not from Earth, right? I mean, human math is almost entirely base 10 because, well, we evolved with 10 fingers.
Exactly.
So you see a highly complex mathematical sequence encoded in base 12, intuitively that whatever calculated it, it definitely wasn't a human hand.
That is the crucial takeaway. And the thing is, Alyssa actually discovered this same base 12 signal years earlier.
Oh, right, the 2019 paper.
Yeah, she published a whistleblower paper about an anomalous transmission she'd found. But as a form of insurance, she deliberately withheld these specific terminal sequences from the publication.
Which ended up saving her, didn't it?
It did. Her paranoia saved her because her paper only survived for, 11 days.
Yeah.
A shadowy network made a few phone calls, completely torpedoed her career.
Just discredited her as a total crank.
And buried the research? Yeah. She thought the sequences were her secret to keep forever.
Until they magically show up in her fake algorithm. And to make things even more complicated, we have to talk about Danny Fitch.
Oh, Danny! The crew's master forger!
Yeah, an ex-special effects guy with, the hands of a neurosurgeon. Before the crew can run their con, they need a prop. So Danny buys a genuine 4.5-billion-year-old Palisite meteorite from a dealer in Vienna.
He plans to map its natural crystals and then, artificially carve a fake alien pattern into it.
But when he cleans it and puts it under a microscope, he finds a microscopic geometric pattern already formed inside the ancient crystal structure.
He was preparing to force a lie onto reality, only to find the truth already etched into the stone.
It's like setting out to forge a Da Vinci painting.
Yeah.
Only to scrape off a layer of old canvas and find Da Vinci's actual authenticated signature underneath.
That is the perfect analogy.
But I have to stop here and challenge this whole premise. Let's be real. We are dealing with professional liars.
That's true.
Marco, Danny, Kara. Their entire existence relies on manipulating perception. If they are this incredibly good at faking realities for a living, how can they, or you, the listener, be absolutely sure the universe itself isn't being faked here?
It's a fair point.
Right. Why shouldn't we assume this is just a deeper con being played on Alyssa?
Well, Danny Fitch wrestles with that exact question. But Bonaldi uses hard science to anchor the fiction here. Danny takes the rock to a mass spectrometer to explain why deep isotopic analysis simply cannot be faked.
Okay, give me the translation on palladium ratios. Why is that the smoking gun?
Sure, so a palisite meteorite forms at the core mantle boundary of an ancient, differentiated asteroid. It takes millions of years of intense heat and pressure in a zero-gravity vacuum.
Just floating out there.
Exactly, for the metals and the olivine crystals to separate and cool in that very specific way. The ratio of palladium isotopes acts like a cosmic fingerprint of that incredibly slow cooling process.
Wow.
Add to that the cosmic ray exposure age, which acts like a sunburn timer showing exactly how many millions of years a rock has been flying unprotected through deep space.
So you can't just bake that in an oven?
Not at all. If you run a test deeper than 2 millimeters into that rock, any human fabrication from the last century will show microscopic seams. The cooling rate will be wrong, the radiation exposure will be missing.
It would just scream fake under a microscope.
Right. This rock is definitively from the dawn of the solar system, and the pattern naturally baked into its core perfectly matches Alyssa's suppressed base 12 data.
That is wild. The Ruse has accidentally procured the physical, undeniable proof she never had. Okay, that physical proof is staggering. But the meteorite isn't the only thing in this story with a carefully constructed surface.
Not by a long shot.
We have to look at the human architecture of this crew, specifically Jake Riley. Jake is Alyssa's childhood friend. They grew up together in this freezing orphanage in Hackney.
The book describes them surviving by learning to read the emotional weather of the adults around them.
Yeah, they learned how to predict the exact mood of a staff member to figure out if they were going to get an extra slice of bread or go hungry.
It's a traumatic upbringing, for sure, but it serves as a hyper-effective training ground for what Jake eventually becomes.
Because the person known as Jake Riley hasn't actually existed for 15 years.
No, he has been operating entirely under the masterpiece identity of Alfred Worthington.
I want you, the listener, to think about your own daily routine for a second. Every text message you send, every casual joke you make at work, every impulse purchase you make.
It's a lot of data.
Now imagine strictly filtering every single one of those interactions for 15 years so you don't break character. That is what Jake does.
It's almost unimaginable.
He builds this fictional Oxford backstory, establishes a career in technology investments, and buys a Mayfair townhouse.
Yeah.
He spends years just sitting in the right private libraries, learning the unspoken codes of the upper class.
Doing discreet favors, slowly accumulating the kind of social credit that makes powerful people trust you implicitly.
And he does all of this just to get close to the institutions that buried Alyssa's 2019 paper.
The psychological toll of that is immense. He essentially erased his own identity to become a perfectly calibrated mirror for the elite.
But come on, we have to look at the logistics here. 15 years of living an undercover lie seems absurdly inefficient.
You think so?
Yeah. If the goal is just to trace some redirected government funding to figure out who silenced Alyssa, why not just hire a world-class hacker? Give a genius 19-year-old a laptop and they can hack a defense server in a week. Why spend a decade and a half drinking tea with lords in Mayfair?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you'll see why. Because hacking a server gives you data, sure, but it doesn't give you institutional leverage.
Leverage.
Bonaldi makes a sharp distinction here between stealing information and dismantling power. The institutions Alyssa was fighting, the ones that erased her career, they operate on geological time.
Right. Bureaucracies have infinite patience.
And invisible walls. A hacker might find a bank routing number, but they can't get inside the velvet-roped rooms where the actual unrecorded decisions are made to ruin a scientist's life.
That makes a terrifying amount of sense.
Jake and Alyssa's shared childhood trauma created this unique, almost frightening stillness in both of them. They understood that to beat a generational power structure, you have to play a generational long game.
So Alfred Worthington wasn't just a disguise to steal a password.
No, he was a pressure-proof submarine designed to dive to the very bottom of the high society trench, where the real monsters live.
That brings us to the collision point, where this submarine finally surfaces. It happens at a tense, high society dinner party in Fitzrovia. Marco Reyes and his crew are finally making their play against their intended mark.
The billionaire, Marcus Hale.
Right. Before we get into the twist, we should quickly map out the rest of the crew in the room. We have Sebastian, the grifter, who acts like a psychological conductor, reading the room and setting the conversational traps.
And working remotely is Kara, their digital phantom, who handles all the untraceable logistics and, fake banking portals.
They've set the stage perfectly. Danny brings out the meteorite as the bait.
Alyssa steps up, playing the role of a desperate scientist seeking private funding.
And she reveals the base 12 terminal sequences. She fully expects Hale to bite, allowing the crew to fleece him out of millions.
But Marcus Hale doesn't react like a gullible billionaire.
No. He holds the meteorite, looks at the pattern, and his eyes don't widen in shock. He just quietly says, "The pattern," not as a question.
As a recognition.
Yes. He has been hunting for this exact signal for 2 years. Hale reveals that a junior researcher named Dr. Wei Chen found the exact same data 3 years prior.
She brought it to Hale for help, and 2 weeks later, she was systematically unmade by the system.
Just vanished. Her funding vanished, her emails were deactivated, her name was literally scrubbed from the university directory.
Put yourself in Marco Reyes' shoes right in that moment. He is the master con artist. He believes he is the one pulling the strings.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Suddenly he realizes he's been played by his own physicist.
Exactly. Alyssa wasn't just running a con on a billionaire.
No, she was using Marco's entire criminal operation as a heavily armed escort to get into a secure room with a man who had the resources to fight the people who ruined her life.
The heist has seamlessly dissolved, merging into a billionaire's crusade.
Which forces the crew to pivot from running a con to waging a war. And we have to talk about the antagonists they're fighting, because it's not what you'd expect.
It's an organization known only as the Network, led by a man named Aldous Crane, operating out of a completely off-the-books office in Whitehall.
Aldous Crane is such a brilliant antagonist because he avoids all the cartoon villain tropes.
Yeah, he doesn't order dramatic assassinations or blow up buildings.
His entire philosophy is minimum necessary intervention. I found that concept fascinating.
It really is. He explicitly avoids heavy management because heavy management creates visible ripples.
And patterns of ripples are exactly what brilliant scientists like Alyssa Hart are trained to hunt down.
Crane understands that brute force is loud. The network has been suppressing this extraterrestrial reality since 1947, and they've done it just by gently tweaking careers.
Denying grants.
And redirecting funding streams, yeah. They keep the truth contained by starving it of oxygen, not by setting it on fire.
And that philosophy creates an incredible contrast with Dr. Wei Chen. Because when the network tried to starve her of oxygen, she didn't just disappear into the ether.
No, she relocated to a tiny, unassuming flat in Edinburgh and went to work.
She didn't have a multi-million-dollar lab. She bought 4 pooled mid-range laptops and wired them together to act as a homemade supercomputer.
It's like building a homemade ham radio to intercept a secure military broadcast. She didn't have the biggest antenna, but she knew the exact frequency to listen to.
Through sheer grit, she scoured global geological archives and identified 7 more meteorites around the world with the exact same base 12 pattern.
And the absolute kicker.
She intercepted a live, continuous extraterrestrial signal that has been broadcasting for 4 billion years.
What's fascinating here is Wei Chen's process, specifically her mindset. She made a philosophical distinction early on. She wasn't hiding, she was practicing strategic stillness.
Strategic stillness?
Yeah. Hiding implies fear and reaction. Stillness is a proactive, calculated tactic.
Because she knew that if she published a single preliminary paper before she had the complete picture, Crane's network would detect the ripple and silence her for good.
So she sat in that flat for over a year, quietly gathering the undeniable proof the world would need, waiting for the perfect configuration of allies to arrive.
And those allies do arrive. Alyssa, Jake, Marco, Marcus Hale, Danny, Kara, Sebastian, they all fly to Edinburgh in the middle of the night.
Wei Chen shows them everything. The live signal, the locations of the 7 meteorites, the 1947 suppression timeline.
But Aldous Crane's network has tracked Hale's movements. Which brings us to the climax, the last ruse.
The stakes here are insane.
It is 6:12 a.m. The network's tactical perimeter team completely surrounds Wei Chen's building on Canongate. Our 8 protagonists are trapped inside.
The boots are literally on the stairs.
How do a bunch of theoretical scientists and white-collar con artists possibly survive a raid by a highly trained government operative?
They execute a masterclass judo move. They realize that fighting a physical battle is exactly what the network is prepared for.
Right.
But Marcus Hale provides the crucial insight that flips the board. He points out that the network's immense power relies on a single, fragile vulnerability.
Institutional silence.
Exactly. He tells the room, you can't classify what's already everywhere.
So they don't fight with weapons, they weaponize the tools of the con. They turn to Kara and Sebastian.
The very skills designed to steal money are suddenly pivoted to distribute the truth.
Kara has exactly 11 minutes before the perimeter team breaches the door. She uses her expertise in spoofing digital identities to build 17 entirely independent, highly secure distribution nodes.
She routes them through uncooperative foreign jurisdictions and anchors the data to decentralized blockchains so no government can ever delete it.
While Kara builds the unkillable infrastructure, Sebastian crafts the narrative.
As a grifter, he knows that raw data is easily ignored. He packages the scientific math, the 1947 timeline, and the live signal coordinates into a digestible, urgent format.
Designed specifically for the psychological profiles of major international journalists. He writes the subject lines that guarantee a 99% open rate.
The tension in this scene is suffocating.
It really is. At 6:19 a.m., Alfred, Sebastian, and Marcus Hale actually walk out the front door of the building, performing as guys just casually heading to their car after an early meeting.
It's pure theater, designed just to confuse the perimeter team and buy Kara a few more seconds.
And then, at 6:23 a.m., Kara hits the execute command. The broadcast goes live.
Boom.
The live signal coordinates, the 1947 timeline, and the combined math of Alyssa and Wei Chen hit global observatories, independent scientists, and major news desks simultaneously.
In a matter of seconds, they decentralize the truth and shatter a 70-year containment protocol.
When Aldous Crane gets the emergency notification on his secure phone in London, observatories in Australia, Chile, and India are already independently confirming the live signal on Twitter.
Crane knows instantly that it's over. His entire philosophy of minimum necessary intervention has failed because you cannot intervene when the data is already multiplying in the hands of the entire planet.
It is an incredibly satisfying payoff. Which leads us to the epilogue. We jump forward 6 months to Geneva. The world has changed.
47 nations and over 300 scientists are gathered in a massive convention center to continuously confirm and study the signal.
The network is officially dissolving, bogged down in endless legal friction, parliamentary oversight, and public outrage.
Wei Chen isn't sitting in a quiet flat anymore. She is running her own cutting-edge, fully funded laboratory.
And Marco Reyes' crew. They didn't rob Marcus Hale, but they still got paid.
Right. They received a legitimate, ironclad legal payout from recovering Alyssa's stolen funding streams, just like she promised them.
Everyone gets exactly what they earned. So what does this all mean?
It forces us to rethink how truth survives in a system actively designed to suppress it. In a world where powerful, deeply entrenched institutions control the flow of information, traditional honesty is often a fatal liability.
Yeah, think about the alternative timeline.
Exactly. If Alyssa had just walked up to a major newspaper with her initial anomalies, she would have been labeled a conspiracy theorist and erased again.
If Wei Chen had shouted from the rooftops the moment she found the first meteorite, she would have been silenced before anyone listened.
Playing by the rules in a rigged game just gets you unmade. This story argues that you need the architecture of a ruse, the fake identities, the front companies, the careful misdirection to transport and ultimately protect the most profound truths from the people trying to bury them.
It's a wild paradox, but when you look at the mechanics of power, it makes perfect sense. It leaves you with so much to reconsider about how information flows in our own world.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Bonaldi's novella shows us this incredible irony. A 4-billion-year-old alien message encoded in base 12 mathematics and buried in the core of an asteroid was ultimately easier for these people to decode than the suffocating layers of human deception hiding it.
It really makes you think.
So think about that. If the most profound, universe-altering truths were discovered tomorrow, well, how much of our own human architecture, our endless bureaucracies, our classified secrets, our carefully constructed institutional lies would have to completely fall apart before we were finally allowed to see it?